another episode of Bonsai Stuff Podcast. It's me, Scott Martin, from Bonsai Matsu, downtown Melbourne, where it's July, so it's just the start of repotting season. I've noticed a few trees around the place, the buds have started to open. Blossoms are starting to appear now, so it's a good time of year to repot. So I thought this podcast I would do a little bit different to normal, in that I will talk you through, as it is, the repotting of one of my trees. So I'm not sure how it's going to go across as a podcast, because obviously repotting is a very visual thing, but I'll certainly do my best to fill you guys in. All right, so what are we looking at? It's a nice little Trident Maple, quite a thick little trunk. Tree stands at about 40 centimetres tall, thereabouts. It's in a nice Japanese pot, quite deep. So the pot that's currently in now is about 7 or 8 centimetres deep, and it's time for a new pair of shoes for the tree. So I'm going to transplant it into a shallower tray. I'll also pot, beautiful blue glaze, speckled blue glaze on it, but the new pot's only possibly 3 centimetres deep, so it's about under half of what it's currently in. So there's a little bit of work to do with the root ball to get there, but that's okay. The trees was repotted back in 2016, so that's 4 years ago. The tree's highly ramified, so it's nice and settled where it is. But I also know that there's a very nice root ball in there to work with, so we'll be okay. So all right, let's get into it. So repotting. Now that's the most important part about repotting. Repotting is all about being prepared and ensuring that you have everything ready to go at the start before you start taking your tree out of the pot. So my process is to work on the new pot first, which I'll do now. To get the new pot prepared, this pot that I've got has got lovely 3 holes in the bottom of it, plus a series of 6 smaller wire holes to help secure the tree in the pot. So I'm just cutting some potting mesh now, which is not fly wire, which I don't like. It's proper mesh that's used purely for the repotting process and securing in the bottom of your container. It's got hole size which is just over 2.5 mil. So the wire that I use to secure both the pot mesh and the tree in the pot is 2.5 mil aluminium wire, not copper, because the aluminium will flex and give as the tree root mass grows. So I stick with aluminium because it'll break the aluminium as opposed to breaking the pot as the tree starts to grow. All right, so now I'm just making some little U-shaped fasteners to help hold the pot mesh in place, and securing 3 of those in the bottom of the pot. The pot mesh is really useful for not only holding the potting mix in, but stopping any nasties from getting in the bottom of your pot as well. So it's really important to make sure that you have it where you can allow water to escape the pot, as well as allowing air to enter into the base of the tree for the roots. So if you use fly wire mesh, what can happen is it's so fine that it fills up pretty quickly with the silt, and then obviously once they're stopped from allowing water out, you get stagnant water remaining in the pot, and effectively you'll drown the roots of your tree. So you need to be careful with that. So I've always found that this size mesh works really well, so I'll stick with it. All right, so now there's 3 bits of potting mesh in the bottom of the pot. Now, to fasten the tree into the pot after it's repotted, which I think is one of the most important things you can do, I take a length of the 2.5 aluminium wire, wrap it around almost to 2/3 to 3/4 of the length of itself, so around the circumference of the pot. Now I'll take always 2 wires to secure the tree in. Never 1, always 2. That wire is then fed through the holes in the bottom of the pot with a nice sharp angled bend in the wire, so it sits nice and flat underneath the base of the pot. You don't want the wire having a lot of play and a lot of give when you do secure the tree into the pot. So having a nice flat wire underneath the base of the pot for this tie-in wire is really, really important. Right. So that's done. That's the pot preparation done for the wire and for the mesh. Next thing I'll do is just put in a shallow layer of drainage scoria. Which sits nice and flat from the bottom. As I said, I like to have all this ready to go before I get the tree out of the pot for repotting. Then over the top of the drainage layer, I'll just sprinkle a light layer of my potting mix that I'm going to use. Now, potting mix for me is equal portions of pumice, scoria and pine nuggets, and I keep that nice and flat. Then put a small mound of soil in the middle. And when I say small mound, it's only maybe 1 centimetre tall and about 5 centimetres round, and I'll get back to the reasoning for that a little bit later on. Alright, so now that's the pot ready to go. My next phase is to remove the tree from its existing pot. If you were going to put the tree back into the same pot, what you would do is remove the tree from its existing pot and then leave the root ball intact, or as intact as you possibly can. Before you did anything with the root ball, you would get the pot cleaned, put the mesh in, put the wire in, put the drainage layer, put a light layer of the new soil over the top, and have it ready to go. Alright, so now I'm going to remove the current tree from its pot. It's wired in, so I cut the wires at the base of the pot. Get them out of the way. So therefore the tree is ready to come out of the pot. I cut the wire holding the potting mesh in as well, so there's no resistance when I do lift the tree out of the pot. And this current pot that it's in is again a good one because it's got five drainage holes in it. So I find the better the quality of the pot, the more effort they put into the drainage and the air transfer. And I can see in the bottom of this pot that there's a lot of roots that are actually starting to come out the bottom. So it's time for a repot. Right, so then using a sickle, I run around the edges of the pot to break the bond between the tree and the pot. Now I must admit I did a little bit of this earlier because it can take quite a time to free the tree from the pot. So, rather than having you listen to me scratch at dirt for 20 minutes, I thought I would make my life a little bit easier and yours a little less boring. So, alright, so the 3 sides of the pot have been freed, and I tilt the tree backwards about 2/3 of the way up the trunk, being really careful not to damage any branches or any of the bark or anything like that. And you just tilt the tree backwards against where you've loosened the soil with the sickle. And the trees come out of the pot nice and easy. It's ready to go. So I put the old pot out of the way. Then looking at this root ball, it is jam packed with nice fine roots that have done their job quite nicely. All right, definitely time for a repot because it's very thick with roots. Now before I start breaking up the soil and looking at the roots, I just for a safety thing I put on gloves, rubber gloves, or a gardening type glove that breathe on top but are waterproof on the base, and some safety glasses because a few years back I had a nasty little incident where I was flicking dirt and some got in my eye, so it's better to be safe than sorry. Alright, one of the first things I do before breaking apart the root ball is have a look at the lower trunk. Now there's inevitably there's a bit of moss that's growing up the trunk, And with a Trident Maple, it's obviously very smooth bark, so it's quite easy to clean off as opposed to something like a pine that's got corky bark. So I use on this tree I'll use an old toothbrush, and I'll go around and I'll give the trunk a bit of a scrub and get rid of all the moss off it now before I start the repotting process. Again, it's that preparedness, getting everything ready and done first before you actually start disturbing the root balls. I think is really important. So it's really a nice clean off. It's exposing a nice part of the nabari around the base of the tree, making it look nice and perfect, which is great. Just working my way around the base, and that's about that. Riveting podcast, cleaning trees with toothbrushes. Sorry. All right. Now, the heavy work first. So I start with a 3-prong root rake, and I start at the base of the tree, underneath the tree, and start breaking up the root ball. And here it's quite heavy work. Lots falling out, but it's not being done aggressively. It's being done quite gently. So my idea is not to break the roots off with the root rake, it's just to break them up, to free them from the confines where they are now. I'm also taking out all the old potting mesh that the roots have grown into. Alright, so that's one half of the underneath part of the tree done. So I'll just rotate the tree 180 degrees and work on the other side of the base of the roots. It's an idea not to have your Sunday best on when you're doing this either, because it's dirty work. I'm lucky I've got a workshop with nice concrete floor, so the mess that I make, it's quite easy to clean up. But also have a black tray tub underneath. I'll put the tree on top of a milk crate upside down, so I can sort of get some distance between the tray, so all the soil falls down, gets out of the way, and keeps my working area nice and clean. Also allows you to get it up at a lot higher level, so you can be looking at what you're doing as opposed to sort of squinting downwards at it. So again, just freeing up those roots, remove some of the old soil. Now, before I get onto the sides or the top of the root ball, just get my root scissors. Just give it a bit of a haircut underneath. Now, there's no large roots in here. The tie down wire is still in there, so you need to be careful you're not going to be cutting through that and damaging your scissors. But your root scissors, I mean, they're designed to go through a lot of stuff that's in the bottom here. You know, the pumice and the scoria, it sort of tears through it, which is good. So I'm not aggressively chopping everything off, just giving it a haircut at the moment. And because I'm not changing the angle on the tree, I'm keeping the root ball at the bottom very consistently flat. So I don't want to have hollowed out sections when it goes into the new pot. I want to try and have it so it's all pretty level and the same consistency. If you do end up with any hollows or parts where you've removed sort of excessive roots, you'll need to make sure that you fill them with soil, because any of those hollow sections, if they don't have soil in there, then you'll find that the roots around that area will die, because they won't grow where there's no medium. It'll leave a nasty little dead patch, which you won't see. As I said, this one's been 4 years since it was repotted, so you wouldn't see the issue with the tree for quite a long time. You'd notice it, I think, with the foliage mass and the tree itself, its health, you would suffer, because you're losing some of that valuable real estate where the roots can grow. But you wouldn't have it physically out of the pot for quite a while. Alright, so that is nice and shone down. I've also as I said at the start of the podcast, looking to reduce the root ball to get into a shallower container. So I've done that. I've reduced the height, and I'll go to a smaller 3-prong rake now that I've cut things back, and I'll just remove a little bit more of the soil underneath the mix, and also it encourages like a what's the right word, a fluffing of the roots that are there, so they can be allowed to grow. So you're looking for any strong downward roots are removed. You're encouraging lateral roots, which we'll get to on the top of the tree shortly. But yeah, I'm just trying to get the roots underneath, so they're not compacted. They've been reduced. They're nice light roots. There's nothing heavy under there. No thick coarse roots that are going to take up space and do nothing for the tree. It's all the fine feeder roots. Alrighty, that looks like that's about done. Now I have got to remove the tie down wires that were in the pot starters, because they're still floating around, and it's been quite a while, so I now have to remove those wires that have had new roots growing all over them. So I'll start with the smaller 3-prong rake, and you can use a single root hook here, will work as well. So I'm working the top of the root ball now, and just gently scraping in a radial fashion away from the trunk towards the outside. So here's where you can get rid of some of the old weeds and anything else like that. And you'll find that that's when you come across the tie down wires as well. And as I was saying, it's nothing is aggressive about this. It's not, you're not racing the clock. You don't want to go leaving your trees sort of exposed for a long time, but you definitely don't want to rush this process, because it is something which is not done very frequently, but it's got to be done right. So wire now is starting to lift. Then continue the process of the root rake, removing, brushing out those roots in a radial fashion, and you start to see a nice light root ball starting to form. Frequency for repotting varies on the tree. This is quite an old tree, and the repotting process itself can create an increased vigour in your tree. It's that regeneration that trees go through every year. They're not like us. They don't get old and grey and wrinkles and start to deteriorate like human beings do, or animals. They go through a process of rejuvenation. So every new season, new growing period, they take off, and they create new foliage and new leaves, and it's magnificent. I wish we operated that way, but unfortunately we don't. So when you repot your trees, you'll create a scenario where you're offering exactly what the tree needs, which is some new medium, which therefore provides a nicer retention of water and nutrients and that sort of thing, and some air for the roots to breathe. And the tree loves it. It goes from having not much space to lots of space to grow, and as those roots start to grow in a rampant fashion with the new availability it has, the foliage takes off as well. So that's where repotting frequency can stretch a little bit further out for older trees, because you want when you want nice fine ramified growth. If you're repotting it every year or 2 years, it can be a little bit much. The tree will produce thick, coarse growth as it's taking off with some roots that are just going berserk. So it's something that you don't need to do every year. Younger the tree, the less important that fine developed growth is. So maybe your repotting frequency is a little bit more, because you want to keep encouraging that rapid growth, which will help produce a thicker trunk, or maybe help with your branch structuring or something like that. Alright, so now the wires are out, the whole root ball around the tree has been raked out. So now what I'll do is take my scissors and I'll work around the edge of the tree. I'm cutting on about a 30-degree angle, if you like, from the outside of the root ball up towards the nabari, so the base of the tree. And I'm just removing a light layer of the top of the roots. I'm also looking for any roots that are growing in a crossing fashion or a bit too thick, or where the nabari isn't as nice as what I'd like it to be. And I'm removing those roots as well. As I said, this thing, this may only happen every 4 years, so it needs to be done. It needs to be done properly. So it's working around, probably about 2/3 done now. And you can see it's not a long process to do this part, and it shouldn't be either. As you're taking something from a black tub to put into a bonsai pot may take a little bit longer because you're doing a lot of the structural work. Once you have your trees set, the repotting process, once you've got nice fine feeder roots, the repotting process every time that you do it should be quite simple, really, because the tough decisions were made as to which roots to remove earlier, and using a nice potting mix, like something pumice based, that really encourages that fine root growth, because the trees can get the nutrients that they need, so they're happy and they divide. And it's it can be a pleasure to repot something that's nice and fine like this, as opposed to something you may pick up from a nursery or online somewhere, and you get it and it's just a nightmare because it's in a heavy organic mix, and all you've got is a few little fine feeder roots, and the rest of it is thick coarse roots that are just vessels for transport of water, really. And then it's a tough decision when you've got thousands and thousands of fine feeder roots. It's actually looks like something in the textbooks. It's very consistent, very easy to repot. Alright, that's it. Tree's done. So the base of the tree is nice and flat. I've got a nice radial spread of roots. I've removed any crossing roots. I've taken out all the weeds. I've been around and I've trimmed the outside of the root ball as well, and removed anything that's thick as well. And I am ready to go. This tree is looking great. All right. So now with your new pot, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is you need to know what the front of the pot is. So every pot has a front. It's like a tree. Even when you buy the best pots in the world, you're going to find that one side will suit the tree better. Look for any chips, broken bits, put them to the back if possible. Try and look for the colouring of the pot. Like this pot I'm looking at, it's got one side is a lighter white, sort of with a bit of blue. The other side is a darker blue speckled, which I think I prefer. So, right. So now I take my tree and I position it where I want it in the pot. For me, it's in the centre of the pot. I make sure quite quickly that the root ball is suitable to fit the new pot, which it is. I stand back and smile with glee as I look at it and think, "You magnificent beast! That's going to look great in that pot." It's a real step up, and a new pot is like a haircut or a new pair of shoes for the tree. And, while pots can be expensive, I think you can have a pot forever. So you really get what you invest with a pot, and you look after them, and they don't get broken. Then they're with you forever. So it might cost a few bucks, but yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it. All right. So now I'm just checking to make sure where this is an informal upright tree, so I want to make sure that the apex comes back towards the centre of the pot, and that I've got it positioned correctly. That the nabari looks nice and evenly spread where I want it. Then, as I mentioned earlier, there was a little bit of a mound in the pot that I had. So what my process is now is to firmly graft around the base of the tree and wiggle it. So I'm going left and right, backwards and forwards with this thing to drive that mound of potting mix up into any of those cavities that I talked about on the base. This one's fairly flat, but I want to make sure that I cover the under part of the tree and the roots consistently. So you'll hear that shimmying down. And then what happens you'll feel it going from wobbling from side to side to suddenly it gets very firm and it takes hold. So there's no further down that pot can go. The tree can go into that pot. And I just check the height on the side, double check everything again. The front of the tree is in the correct position. It's nice, there's no cavities underneath the tree now. I start to tie the tree into the pot. I've got 4 wires coming up out of the pot, and I do a 4-way tie-in with my with the wires. So I use pliers, pull the wires nice and taut, take out any slack, pinch the wire together and start to turn. So pull the wire, pinch it with my fingers and then turn. So it's actually pressure I'm putting on the wire and not through the pliers but from my hands. Alright, so then work around to the next. Pull it up, tension, pinch, twist. Give about 4 or 5 turns of the wire. And go around to the next wire. So connecting the wire 3 ways around the pot. I was going to do a 4th, but I don't need to. It's nice and secure. Alright. So now what I'm doing to test the wire is I'm actually picking the tree up around the base, just above the nabari, and with one hand I'm shaking the tree. Now you can't hear anything because nothing's moving. The tree is nice and secure. So it means that if the tree gets knocked over for whatever reason, then it's not going to fall out of the pot. I'm just cutting the wires now shorter, so there's no long dangy bits around the tree. And it also means that as the tree starts to grow and I have new roots pushing out, then those roots can grow securely without the tree moving at all. Any movement of the tree once it's been put into the pot can be detrimental to those new roots that are growing. So I've got to be mindful of that, and that's what securing the tree in the pot is all about. Alright, so now just getting a scoop of the potting mix, and I'm going to sprinkle it gently around the tree. I've got the tree on a turntable on one of my trolleys, one of the red ones, and I am just filling the tree with new mix. And I'm just using one of my fingers to help push it down into the space between the tree and the pot. And sprinkling it around. Right. Now, the next part, which is a really important part, take a long chopstick, and I've seen it where people use the chopstick like a jackhammer, where they're smashing it into the pot. I don't think that's entirely correct or appropriate. So between my fingers, I wiggle it. So I'm just putting it between. So I'm using one hand to hold the mix in, the other hand is gently jiggling the potting mix down into the root mass that's there that I freed up before, and I'm making sure that where the tree is close to the edge of the pot, there's no cavities. It's really important to make sure that you get rid of all the cavities in the potting mix, and this you'll find also helps to get the potting mix right the way down, the soil mix right the way down into the base of the pot, and it starts to settle. And you'll feel that with I'm using my right hand with the chopstick, and my left hand is holding the mix and working around the pot. And as I go around spinning the tree on the turntable, I can feel the mix starting to get more and more firm around the pot. So it's gone from being loose to now there's some resistance there. And as I put the chopstick back in, I can feel that there's definitely parts where it's not working its way down to the bottom of the pot anymore. So it's starting to work. So anywhere there is a soft spot, I'll just work that a little bit more than anywhere else. And keep going around, keep spinning this thing. So it's about 3. It's important not to overdo this part. You don't want to be breaking and damaging those roots with the chopstick over and over, but you want to make sure it's done properly. Like anything we do with bonsai, it's all got to be done properly. Right, so there's just a few little spots I'm going to top up now. It's a little bit more mix. Yep. And I'll just go around with my hands now and just firmly press the soil down around the edges so it's nice and flat and compacted. Because I'm using scorias about up to 7 to 10 mil, and the pumice is 1 to 7 mil. There's some larger particles around the top of the mix. I don't bother splitting my mix into different size components for such a small pot like this. It'd be almost impossible to get the layers right. So what I'll do now is I'll just take my little brush and I'll just gently brush away from the nabari towards the edge of the pot. And I don't know if you can hear it, but all the larger stones, this is just gently too, like I'm using it like the back of the brush, just gently brushing away. All the larger particles are falling away and leaving only the smaller particles on the very top of the pot. And that looks a lot nicer now too. So all those bigger chunks of scoria or pumice have gone. And back to a nice smaller size mix. So it looks in proportion. Now, just for my own satisfaction, I'll have another look at the tree. Yeah, that's cracking. That's looking good. All right. So we're nearly at the end of the repotting stage, and the last thing that I like to do is use sphagnum moss as a layer on top of the pot. So I've put this through a sieve. The sieve size is, I don't know, maybe 8 mil or something like that. It's the largest one that you sort of use with bonsai. So that the sphagnum goes from being really long, thick pieces to very fine pieces, but it's not powder. And then I put it into a container, fill it with water, make it into like a slurry, if you like. Then I'll go around and I'll put that on the soil surface, and then I'll pat it in. So I'm firmly patting the sphagnum, just a very light layer. Like I'm not talking more than a couple of mil layer of sphagnum, right the way around the whole potting mix. I'm not putting 2 centimetres of this stuff on there. It's really just to provide protection to the surface roots that are there. Also, it stops the mix from washing away. When you water the tree, the sphagnum helps hold that soil on the mix on top of the pot in as well. I also like to use the sphagnum because it's a telltale for me in that once you've repotted the trees, obviously we're just coming out of dormancy now, so there's nothing really happening with the tree. It's getting ready to grow, but it's not at the point where it's sucking up a lot of water just yet. But it's not far off, and it will be. It will get to the point where it's going to start taking moisture. So once you've repotted the tree, I keep them in my workshop here. I keep them out of the sun, I keep them out of the wind, keep them out of everything, all exposure to anything, and just protect them for a little bit. And the sphagnum moss for me is a telltale that I can see when I can physically see when the tree starts to take up moisture, because the sphagnum moss dries out. It starts to change, and that's the indicator for me that I need to be mindful that tree is now starting to take water. So I'll water it a little bit more frequently. All trees don't wake up at the same time. So once you've repotted, watering everything at the same rate is silly, because you're effectively watering something which is doing nothing. So once I start to see the sphagnum moss dry out on quite a frequent basis, day after day after day, I know that tree is now starting to move. By then the buds will have started to open as well. There'll be starting to be leaves, and the tree's stabilising. So that's when I can move it out into a protected spot in the yard. And obviously watch for frost and stuff like that while we're still in this period of winter. But we're not far off being into spring, so hence the reason why it's the perfect time to repot right now. All right, so the tree is potted. Everything looks nice. I'll give the tree a bit of a once-over with a rag, just to take anything off around the outside. And that looks good. Looks really good. Next phase, which you're not going to be privy to, is I take the tree outside, I put it onto a milk crate or something that's got a mesh underneath it, and then I'll water the life out of it, because this first water is really important. Any siltery particles or anything like that, it's really important to wash them out now before the root mass settles. If you've got your scoria as a base, and there's red dust or something like that with it, you don't want it to congeal and amass around the holes, the drainage holes around the bottom of the pot, because they'll clog it. It'll set like concrete, and it's 3 or 4 years down the track before you're going to see the damage that's been done. So I always make sure this first water, I really thoroughly water everything. Make sure I get as much of that fine stuff out there as I possibly can. The indicators are that the water coming through the bottom of the pot is nice and clear. It goes from being a milky colour, when everything's floating around, to being really clear. It's not appropriate to do a little bit of water, walk away, come back in now and do a little bit more water, because it's too late. Everything's going to have set and clung on by then. So you want to get into it nice and early, give it lots and lots and lots and lots of water, flood everything out, and make sure that it sits well. Another thing I didn't talk about before is the soil has been pre-sieved. I always take out the fines, the 1 mil size particles and below, get taken out as much as possible to try and help, because I think that they do nothing but cause issues for the tree, and I like to make sure I get as much of that stuff out as I possibly can. So yeah, that's repotting. It's been a continuous feed. You'll notice there hasn't been any breaks in this, because it's one of those things that once you start, you have to go right the way through until the fat lady sings. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been great for me. I've got one of my trees into a beautiful pot. Bloody proud as punch, to be honest. It looks really good. Like I said, I love repotting. Repotting is one of my favourite times of the year. It's not a daunting thing. It's really exciting. I've looked at this magnificent little tree for 4 years in the same pot, which I've really enjoyed. I've really loved that pot. But now seeing it in this new one, it's like it's a brand new tree for me. So yeah, if you're in this part of the world, then enjoy your repotting season. If not, 6 months to buy new pots, and when your time comes, you hopefully have a listen to this as well, and hopefully it helps a little bit. Thanks for tuning in. Stay in touch. Shoot me any questions you've got. I'm sure I've breezed over a few things that I probably should have gone into in more depth, but that's repotting, which is bonsai stuff. It's me, Scott. So stay in touch via the socials, Instagram, Facebook, or scott@bonsaimatsu.com. And thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you next time. Until next time, good luck repotting. See you later.